I'm Wick for Lions.
I'm Josh. Nice to meet you.
That helps.
I just got this thing from
Okay.
you know, that's a freedom survivors, which is next month. I think it's on the 14th.
Well,
I've been listening from the rescue squad people, and also I've been seeing them live. I got that by way of fans. We know he bought that house. He wants y'all to here's some sucker box.
Come on now.
It turns out just in time.
Yeah.
I just shifted the dust and found the problem.
Oh yeah. That'll blow. Just blow over.
The reactor, if someone has a coronary, then oh no, it's okay.
That's it. You got
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the April 13th, 2023 meeting. If everyone would please join me, we'll stand for the pledge of
The United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you could hear, Councilor Robertson is joining us on Zoom, and he was here for the work session as well. The invocation moment of silence is Councilor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey. I will be doing a prayer, so if you want to participate, you can. If you don't, that's okay. So, Heavenly Father, today is the day that you have made. I am glad for this day. I thank you for your goodness, mercy, and grace towards us as individuals and a community. I pray for this time with all its decisions, activities, relationships, and creativity. I give it all to you because I know that your Son is Lord of all. May each of us bring honor and glory to your name. We pray for your will to be done in us individually and collectively. Most of all, let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. The first order is proclamation for National Library Week. Do we have anyone here from the library? Oh, I see Sarah. All right. National Library Week 2023. Whereas libraries provide the opportunity for everyone to pursue their passions and engage in lifelong learning, allowing them to live their best life. And whereas libraries strive to be trusted and welcoming institutions for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. And whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the populations they serve and ensure equity of access for all. And whereas libraries adapt to the ever-changing needs of their community, continually expanding their collections, services, and partnerships. And whereas libraries play a pivotal role in the economic vitality of communities by providing internet and technology access, literacy skills, and support for job seekers, small businesses, and entrepreneurs. And whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that promote a sense of local connection, advancing, understanding, civic engagement, and shared community goals. And whereas libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by Staunton City Council that April 23rd through the 29th of 2023 is hereby recognized as National Library Week in the city of Staunton. And during this week, Council encourages all residents to visit their Staunton Public Library to explore the wealth of resources available. Adopted this 13th day of April 2023, Stephen W. Clappy, Mayor of Staunton.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I want to say thank you to Council and to this wonderful city for supporting library services. Many of you have heard me say that when I started as a librarian, I never wanted to be a director, but then this job opened up to serve the city of Staunton, and I jumped at the opportunity, and I am grateful for it every day. So I would encourage all of you to come see what we have to offer you. I think you would be pleasantly surprised. It's not just books, but telescopes, museum passes, state park passes, and a variety of events that we offer all the time. So please come see us during National Library Week later this month, but also throughout the year.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that brings us to the mayor's report. We had a busy day today. I want everyone here to be aware that today was designated Dr. Pamela Fox Day at Mary Baldwin University. The City of Staunton community recognized with great appreciation Dr. Fox's 20 years of visionary leadership as Mary Baldwin's 9th president. There was a wonderful event on the lawn in front of the administration building at Mary Baldwin. There was about 200 participants were there, and they honored Dr. Fox's 20 years of service as she retires here in June. Tomorrow there will be news of our new president. They will be announcing that tomorrow, I understand, but today was Pamela's Day. It was a great event. Vice Mayor Darby and Councilor Arrow were there with me, and we had a great time. It was a little warm in the sun. It was 2:30 this afternoon, sitting out on the lawn. It was downright hot. So, but it was a great event. We had a good time. So we're very pleased that Pamela Fox is staying in Staunton. And of course, her husband, Dan Lehman, was also honored. And he's a great guy, and he runs the community foundation for our city, and he does so much. So they are staying. They are moving out of the president's house up there, and they will be at their other house in Swope. But it was a great day. So if you get a chance to see Dr. Fox, please congratulate her on a wonderful, wonderful career. And I also attended the Landscape Committee meeting at Montgomery Hall Park on Tuesday. And plans were being made for Earth Day, which will be Saturday a week away on April 22nd. Earth Day has expanded to, the whole earth and environmental matters. It originally started in the 1870s as Arbor Day. And there was a fair amount of discussion about the tree planting in Staunton for Arbor Day. And the 162 trees that were damaged and lost in the park system last July in that horrible storm will all be replaced by April 22nd. So job well done by the city to come back from that terrible storm. So it was a good report, and they do a lot in the city of Staunton as well. Been doing a lot with the schools. So we turn it open to other members from council. Do you have anything y'all want to add?
Steve?
Councilor Robertson.
Mayor Claffey, I wanted to make sure that our diabetic citizens were aware of. I think I mentioned the last time that, there was been quite a bit of pressure on some of these drug companies to reduce prices of insulin, and we had thought that was going to be sometime in the fall, but many of the companies have now come out with basically the same thing as their brand. They just have packaged it almost the same. But I mean, we have seen prices as low as $35 when, before they were hundreds. So my advice for the patients would be to ask their doctor or ask your pharmacist to see if they could possibly get that new generic drug, either through pen, the pen or the vial. So, ask away. You might be pleasantly surprised.
Very good. Other items by members of council? Only ones?
Sure. I mean, I'll go ahead. Yeah, I enjoyed attending an SVASC meeting, a Shenandoah Valley Animal Services Center meeting. Staunton is part owner of the animal shelter, and it was absolutely packed. It was good to see the community of really committed and concerned residents from all three localities who support the animals in our region, and enjoyed seeing how that operates. I also attended something about Staunton Crossing, an update on Staunton Crossing that was up at the Villages about a week and a half ago, and just learned more about how that project is progressing. And I haven't been in a meeting, I don't think, so I just wanted to say that Mayor Claffey and I had a wonderful listening session a week and a half ago. And it was at the rescue squad, and about 40 plus people attended, and We really enjoyed meeting with many of the residents and having the opportunity to interact. You know, when we have matters from the public, we don't get to respond, but Mayor Claffey and I really enjoyed being able to have a back and forth with the residents. And at that meeting, we decided we would be doing these quarterly. And so we look forward to continuing those conversations and meeting more people and hearing from you.
Yeah, actually, on the subject of town halls, I think Amy and I had talked about doing one. I wouldn't want to delay this since my house is apparently getting every single school-borne illness floating through it. But we have survived so far, and would like to go ahead and set one up pretty soon here. But we'll get more specific on the date coming up. So we just haven't had a chance to do that yet. But they also went to the Stand Crossing meeting there too. It was good and interesting to see how that's rolling along. We've got a little ways to go, but we've come a ways as well on that too. And then, so you got a chance to go to the Methodist Church fish fry. Alice was there as well. That was a pretty fun one. That's a good historic church there, and they're a good event for them. I think last year they sold out in like 45 minutes or something like that. So it's either tell everyone or tell no one. I don't know.
So this year they was prepared.
Yeah, they were ready. So I think it'll be even more ready next year. All right.
Hey, Steve,
Yes.
I just got a text from a citizen. They said, please have someone turn the microphones on so the public can listen.
Can you not?
Hello?
Colin? We have problems?
Hello? They're on. They're on.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine, but,
34 people listening. Okay.
okay,
All right.
Thanks
Anyone?
for letting us know.
good enough.
Yes, Mayor
Maybe we need
Claffey.
to speak more loudly.
Mayor
Councilman?
Claffey, I just want to, on the subject of town halls, Mark and I did a town hall at the end of last month. And we enjoyed doing that also, and we will continue to also do those as well. I attended on April 5th, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission had their first meet and greet with businesses at the Innovation Hub. And I wish it would have been as many business owners there as it is here tonight, but that was their first, and hopefully there be a couple more coming up. I am the council liaison for that, and they just wanted to come out and talk to businesses about who they are and what they're doing, and wanted to get feedback. And they had sent out surveys, so if you got a survey, please fill it out and send it back. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, next order is approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I can find it.
As they desperately look for it. Councilor Holmes.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting agenda as presented.
Agenda. This is minutes.
Sorry, as presented.
All right, I have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of the work session regular meeting of March 23rd, 2023. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Kessler.
Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes. Aye. Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And now I need approval of the minutes for the special meeting of April 5th, 2023.
I move to approve the special meeting, April 26th. April 5th, as presented.
Minutes. The minutes.
The minutes as presented, I'm sorry.
I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the special meeting of April 5th, 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second.
For Edwards. Mr. Kessler.
Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood. Aye. Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes. Aye. Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. That gets us to item A of our regular meeting, a public hearing and consideration of a request by Kelly Grantner for a special use permit at 114 West Johnson Street to allow living quarters at the ground level. Ms. Beauregard.
Rodney Rhodes will present this item, and can I just say something about the live stream? It's the audio stream that's not working, Mr. Kestaker. Zoom seems to be working, but for some reason the audio stream isn't working. So,
It could be an issue with the TV station.
yeah, it might be the TV. So if people are out there, it's very easy to get on Zoom or to call in, but it seems maybe it might be that the TV station is down right now. And there's nothing we can do about that right now, so. But there's other ways to get into the meeting as well. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Rhodes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Claffey, City Council members. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Ms. Grantera is requesting a special use permit at 114 West Johnson Street to construct a residential apartment unit in the rear portion of the ground floor of the existing building. The property is located on the south side of West Johnson Street, basically directly across from us here. The building was constructed in the 1920s and was originally used as a veterinary practice. It's my understanding those two large doors on the front, that's where the animals entered. Ms. Grantera acquired the property in 2019 and has since done some renovations to the property, to the exterior and to the two residential units on the second floor. She is now requesting approval of a special use permit to create one additional residential unit on the first floor. This would be on the back side of that, of what fronts on West Johnson Street. The property is on B2 General Business District, and residential use on the ground and basement levels is only permitted by special use permits. Staff has reviewed this request and had no concerns with it. The property is in the central business parking exempt area, so off-street parking will not be required, but it's directly adjacent to two parking facilities. I would note that the rear of this building has limited access and visibility, which makes deliveries difficult and hinders customer access. Therefore, staff supported this request. And at the Planning Commission's March 16th, 2023 meeting, the Commission conducted a public hearing. No one spoke in opposition to the request of the public hearing, nor have I received any inquiries in opposition to this proposal by phone or email or by letter. And at the conclusion of that public hearing on a 5-0 vote, the Commission recommended approval of the special use permit with the following conditions. One, that the ground floor of the structure shall be used for only one additional residential unit. Two, the unit must be accessed from the rear of the building. And three, the portion of the ground floor facing West Johnson Street must continue to be used for commercial purposes. I'm glad to take any questions the council has at this time or after you conduct the public hearing.
Councilors, questions? All right, in a moment, I will open up the public hearing. It is the time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a specific topic. We ask that you please give your name, your address, and then keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. When you reach the 5-minute limit, I will let you know that your time limit has expired. For our Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak on this particular public hearing. If you raise your hand during this public hearing, you will be given a chance to raise your hand during the council public hearing matters from the public sessions. Once everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, I will then close the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing if you wish to speak.
Mayor Claffey.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, before you open the public hearing, we should give the applicant the opportunity.
Very good. Is the applicant present?
Good evening. I'm the applicant. My name is Kelly Grantier,
Welcome.
and I am, thank you, the owner of 114 West Johnson Street, and I am the one requesting a special use permit for that additional apartment. Do you all have any questions of me concerning this?
I went by and looked at your property and it looks like it's a tailor-made for this.
I agree.
Yeah, we went by with planning commission, and it, as I think I said to you at that meeting, it looks like it's just gonna be a really terrific improvement, particularly the back, the staircase that's gonna be coming off the back and being replaced by a much nicer looking deck. And I think it's just an important addition to our housing stock here in Staunton. And hearing the interesting backstory that it was a veterinarian, I think it adds a little interest. So I'm definitely for it.
Very good.
And you did go in front of the historic commission as well about that,
Yes, I did.
the metal deck on the back there as well too. So,
Yes,
so we know that'll be
that.
appropriate within the district.
Mhm.
Questions? Ms. Grant? Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this specific matter? Hearing none, I will now, do we have anybody on Zoom?
No, sir, we do not.
Hearing none, I will now close the public hearing. Entertain a motion.
Mayor Claffey,
Councilor Woods.
I move that council adopt the resolution and approve the special use permit with conditions as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second. Terry Holmes.
Councilor Holmes is second. Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Thank you, Ms. Grantier. Thank you.
All right, so now item B is a public hearing and consideration of a request by David and Michelle Wise to rezone a portion of 1007 Seth Drive from R3 medium density residential conditional to I1 light industrial district conditional. Ms. Beauregard,
I hand it back over to Mr. Rhodes.
welcome back.
Thank you. As the mayor noted in the introduction to this, Mr. and Mrs. Wise have requested a rezoning of approximately 1 acre portion of 1007 Seth Drive from R3 medium density residential district conditional to I1 light industrial district conditional. The applicants own the adjoining business, which they constructed in 2020, and that is Easy Self Storage. Now, they now wish to expand that development and have filed a site plan to do so, to add some additional storage units there. However, the property where they want to expand on, or at least a very small portion of it, is zoned residential conditional, and self-storage is only permitted in the industrial districts. Therefore, they are requesting this rezoning. Staff has reviewed this request and has no issues with the proposal. The Plan Commission conducted a public hearing on March 16, 2023. During the public hearing, no one spoke in opposition to the request. Neither have we received any other opposition to this request. And on a 4-0 vote, the Commission unanimously voted to recommend approval of the rezoning. I'll be glad to take any questions you have now or after you conduct a public hearing. I see Daniel Hansen in attendance, who is the agent for the applicant, if you'd like to hear from him at this time.
Certainly, bring them on. Councilors, do you have any questions?
Just curious how many more units are going to put there.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I appreciate your time this evening. I am Daniel Hansen with Balzer & Associates, and I am the surveyor for this project. Pretty much Mr. Rhodes kind of said it all. It's about 1 acre. It's part of the Middlebrook Park sort of greater development here. The 1 acre is basically needed to go to industrial so that they can complete this project. It would be our intent, just so you're aware, that once if you elect to turn this into industrial zoning, that we do a boundary line adjustment plat to follow this up, so that the entire piece is all one zoning. It wouldn't be a split zone parcel. We just that might have been part of your packet, I know it's part of the planning commission packet, the proposed boundary line adjustment. So sort of make sure everything's all good and cleaned up. For the most part, this piece of land is actually not really changing much. Again, most of this land is it's an existing stormwater management pond for Middlebrook Park. It's going to remain that. It just needs to be industrial. So we have, I believe there's a buffer required pretty much for the industrial project to the residential. So it's in some ways it's kind of more just robbing Peter to pay Paul, if you will. But that's kind of the plan here. If you've got any other questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I'll be honest with you, I've heard one already about how many units it's going to be, and the truth is I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get you that answer if you'd like me to as soon as tomorrow. I know it's on the site plan, I just don't have a copy of the site plan with me.
Do the electrical lines go through that particular portion that's going to be changed? Based on the aerial photograph, I don't believe they do. I think there's still just a little bit more to the north of this property. Okay. Thank you. Any further questions from members of council? Well, then I'm going to open this public hearing up to address the specific item only.
I do appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Anyone like to speak on this matter? Mr. Kester, anybody on Zoom?
No, sir.
Then I'm going to close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mayor Claffey,
Councilor.
I move that council adopt the ordinance and approve the conditional rezoning as recommended by the planning commission.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilor Arrowood, second. Mr. Kester.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Yeah.
Brings us to item C, which is a public hearing and a consideration of an amendment to Staunton City Code, sections 18.55B1 Local Business District and 18.75 I1 Light Industrial District and 18.10 definitions of Title 18 zoning to allow pet boarding facility in all business and industrial districts. Ms. Bauer,
Mr. Rhodes.
welcome back.
Thanks. Did you miss me?
I did.
Mr. Hillman approached the city several months ago inquiring about establishing a pet boarding facility. However, there's no place in our zoning ordinance where we allow that. So he took it upon himself to apply for an amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow pet boarding facilities. And after working with him, we concurred that maybe the business and industrial districts would be the best place for such a facility. So staff worked with him and we looked at other jurisdictions as far as what we had, as far as requirements for pet boarding facilities. So we drafted what's before you tonight. I would note that the city attorney and the police department animal control officers have reviewed the draft amendment. This would basically allow pet boarding facilities by right in any business or industrial district. However, it would have to meet various conditions which require fairly extensive setbacks, in particular if you're next to a residential area or a dwelling, to limit the impacts on residential development. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this matter on March 16th, 2023. No one spoke in opposition to the request. And on a 5-0 vote, the commission voted to recommend approval of the amendment. And then once again, I would note that we have not received any other correspondence in opposition to this proposed amendment. And I'm sorry, but I cannot pick Mr. Hillman out of this crowd here.
He might be in the hallway. I think I saw him in the hallway. He was here. I saw him maybe in the hall. There he is.
Welcome, Mr. Hillman.
Hi, I'm Caleb Hillman, and we'd just like to add a dog boarding facility at a later date, and I'm just trying to get this added through the amendment process. If anybody has any questions,
Do any members of council have any questions? Thank you for taking this initiative.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question for you, Mr. Hillman, or for Mr. Rhodes, but adding to the ordinance, was there an indication of who was going to be inspecting the animal facility on a regular basis?
I'm pretty sure Virginia has somebody that comes around they do the veterinary offices and they do pet boarding.
Okay, okay, so it's not our local people. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any questions from council? Then I will open up the public hearing for this matter. Anyone like to speak on this matter? Mr. Kester, anyone on Zoom?
No, sir.
All right. On twice. All right. Public hearing is closed. I'll be glad to entertain a motion.
Mayor Flaherty. I move the council adopt the ordinance and approve the amendments as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Edwards is second. Mr. Kester.
Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Airwood.
Aye.
Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for doing that. Thank you, Rodney. That brings us to item D, public hearing of an ordinance to establish a budget for fiscal year 2024, which begins on July 1st, 2023 and runs till June 30th, 2024. Ms. Beauregard.
Jesse Moyers, our Chief Finance Officer, will run through this item before the public hearing is opened.
Welcome.
Thank you. So the city manager's proposed budget for fiscal year 2024 was introduced to the council on March 23rd. We've had two budget work sessions since then, April 6th and then earlier this evening at the work session. Tonight is the public hearing regarding this proposed budget. The public hearing was properly advertised in the newsletter on April 5th, 2023, and we recommend you conduct the public hearing this time.
Hey, any questions before we start from the councilors? All right, I'm going to open up the public hearing, and this will be strictly to discuss items on the budget for 2024. Public hearing is open.
I'm Brenda Mead, Sherwood Avenue, Staunton. So I just want to say something right off the bat here about the presentation you had during the work session this afternoon. It was not posted online before this meeting. And sitting in this council chamber trying to keep up with, the nickel and diming that you did this evening was impossible. I don't know how you all can make any sense of it if you're just getting this today. So I just want to register my concern about that. Second is that I support keeping the rate or the proposed rate of 89 cents that was proposed by the city manager. And that includes, and I'm very happy about this, a 5% raise for city employees. Forbes estimates that the cost of turnover of employees is 1.5 to 2 times their base pay. That's the cost of turnover. So the city's budget, city employees excluding schools, is $22 million. That means that if there's, and I've been told that turnover in the city is about 50% from very reliable sources. So essentially what employee turnover costs the city is about $2 million a year. So I think the idea of raising employee salaries and completing the work towards raising minimums for some of the employees who have been victims of wage compression, I guess is what you call it, for a couple of years. So I very much support that and appreciate the fact that that hasn't been taken out of the budget. The third point I want to make is that depending on carryover is risky if you're using that to fund the CIP. The property tax is 100% predictable. You go into the year knowing almost, to a few pennies, exactly what that revenue is going to be. The other taxes, sales tax, meals tax, lodging tax, business tax, all those other sources of revenue depend on factors that are completely out of the city's control. So what you're doing is saying that you're going to bet, you're making a bet that those revenues will come in as projected. And you're betting my money. And I'm not a bettor. I'm not a gambler. And I hope you won't be too. Because if you don't have what's left after if you don't win the bet and you don't have the carryover, that means you're sacrificing funding CIP. So I very, very much support keeping that rate at 89 cents. And finally, I want to say that you put Terry Holmes on this city council specifically because of his budget experience. So I think you need to listen to Terry. And Terry has said he preferred at 92, but he would be willing to go to 89. I think that's where it should be. Live up to what you at least told us about your selection of Terry for this council. Thank you.
Mr. Custer, are you online?
No, sir.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Amanda Campbell, 1013 East Beverly Street. I'm here to voice my support for keeping the current tax rate or dropping no lower than the proposed real estate tax rate of 89 cents per $100. I realize this may not be a popular position, but after reading the proposed budget, I am convinced that it is necessary. No one likes taxes. When I first read my latest real estate tax assessment value, my initial reaction was, oh. But as I thought about the services that we expect in the city of Staunton, I tried to keep it in perspective. On the forefront of my mind is the fear that reducing the tax rate will jeopardize the school budget and leave us in a position similar to last year. A strong, fully funded school system is the foundation of a strong community, and I would not support a budget that underfunds or decreases the school budget. To be clear, I also support fiscal responsibility, and I encourage council members to think critically and creatively to cut spending where possible. Providing tax relief to elderly citizens and to citizens with disabilities and those who earn a low income should also be a priority. But I urge you not to lower the tax rate below the proposed 89 cents. The health of our city depends on this revenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Custer? No, sir.
You do, just tell me. I'll just continue. Well,
Hi, I'm Pamela Mason Wagner, resident of Staunton at 164 North Coulter. I too am here to speak in favor of keeping the current tax rate or dropping it no lower than 89 cents. I did attend the work session earlier, and I was quite concerned about the ways that were being proposed to come in at a lower rate than what the city manager had initially proposed. I also attended both the town halls that were held by 4 of you, and I believe the 2 town halls I attended, only one person spoke asking for the tax rate to be cut. Everyone else in attendance was quite comfortable with the higher rate. One item in particular, the enterprise zone grant that was discussed as being one on the chopping block. I know that the Arcadia project is planning to apply for that grant. And it's possible no one has applied in the past few years because of the pandemic, and that's not a reason to cut that from the budget. Thank you.
My name is Cindy Connors. I live at 106A Skyline Avenue. I'm a proud West End resident, and I am here to speak in favor of the current tax rate, or at the worst, lowering it to 0.89. I listened to the work session earlier today. I apologize for being a little late, missing some of it, but there was a comment made that we aren't cutting services. That may or may not be true. The problem is we're not providing enough services. One which is, again, I still can't walk to a restaurant in the West End safely on a sidewalk. It's a ridiculously basic thing that a main street like Beverly have a sidewalk. And this is, believe me, only meant to be one example of many of services that we need to provide. There was also a wish list, it was called, hanging, shown on the screen earlier, but it was called, I think, something like the looking forward list. Nothing on that list was a wish. Everything on that list is a need for the city. And we're kicking the can down the road saying, well, this year we just can't do it. This year we can't do it. We have many things in the city that we need to fund fully. Flood prevention, all kinds of infrastructure, etc. I care totally about the people that may be economically strapped right now. I live amongst them and I talk to them. And that's one of the things the city everybody needs to pay their fair share. And we need to provide those people more services. That takes more money. There's lots of ways the city can help people that are economically disadvantaged and would struggle to stay in their house. I believe they're in the minority in this city and that we shouldn't cut the tax rate solely because some folks will have trouble paying it. We need to help those folks but collect the revenue to make this city the great place it really can be, not the adequate place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Amy Ratchford, 1001 Selma Boulevard, Staunton. Good evening. I'm here to also speak in favor of keeping the tax rate where it is. I would prefer it not to even go down to the city manager's recommendation. And there's a couple of reasons. One, I've heard pushback on the speed of the growth of the city budget over the past 3 years in particular. And I'd like to point out that it has been in line with inflation, that we've been in a situation where all the costs are going up. And so naturally, the city's costs are going up. I think also that we have things within the city that we know are going to continue to go up. That's the cost of employment. That's the cost of healthcare. That's the cost of caring for our aging buildings. And finally, we have a process in the nonprofit world where we talk about how we don't budget for depreciation, right? That usually puts you in a place where when an HVAC unit dies, you have to come up with $50,000 really quick. Well, that's one thing for a medium-sized nonprofit. As a city, to not budget for depreciation of things that you know already need the infrastructure help. You have the evidence in front of you of what we need to invest in. Cutting the tax rate now means that we will not have the money to do the things that we know need to happen. We've been blessed with grants and other sources to help with water and sewer up until now. There is no guarantee that that's going to keep coming, and we know that borrowing is not the best way. Let's keep the tax rate where it is. Let's put that money away that we can so that we can pay our way forward and not bankrupt the generations to come.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Hi, councilors. I'm Joanne Sacco Jeter. I'm at 221 Sunnyside Street. I am another concerned citizen here to urge you to keep the current tax rate. We can only be a great city if we provide excellent services to all of the people. I can understand that there may be financial burdens on those paying the real estate taxes, but I think there are solutions beyond lowering the tax rate. We can offer some kinds of relief for applicants that applies to. I think to lower the tax rate, any lower than 89 is. I'm thinking of what Cindy said in that we want to be more than just adequate. I think to go lower than that would make us inadequate. Please keep it where it is. Thank you.
Good evening, members of council. My name is Dave Madison. I live at 15 North Augusta. I too would be here. I thought I'd be in the minority, but I'm really glad that so far I'm in the majority as far as advocating for the 89 cents. I think I came to the first council meeting that you had about a month ago in terms of the introduction of the budget. And somebody made an interesting comment that sort of struck with me. And that was the fact that the amount of tax at 89 cents. So I went home and I did a little bit of research. And I would suggest that in 2021, for $250,000 home, the taxes were $2,300. If you took that same $250,000 home and the assessment goes up 25%, that means the value of the home is $312,000. So that $312,000 at 89 cents, the tax is $2,781. So the increase in tax is $481. But the increased net worth to the owner is $62,500. Now, the problem is you can't spend it. But your job as members of council, I would suggest, you have to balance the needs of council, the resources of council, and most of all, be planning for the future. So I would just ask that you basically try to make this work at 89 cents. It's not perfect, but I think when we look at the reasons that people come to Staunton, they come because they like our downtown, they like our schools. And I recently completed a contract as a realtor for some folks that are coming here from Phoenix. And they're basically selling the house in Phoenix for about the same price they're buying it here. It's in the $600,000 range. And they were flabbergasted at the amount of taxes. They said, it can't be right. So to some, it might seem like a lot, but I would suggest that with the amount of services that we deliver, I don't think anybody in this area could comprehend how good a snow job we do in the wintertime. With our, when you see a snowplow on the front of a trash truck, come on, guys, you're doing it right. So don't give it up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Luella Hill. I live at 1201 Jackson Street here in Staunton. And I'm just building off of what you've been hearing over and over, which is to please keep the tax rate at what it is. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to say the same thing, which is when I tell my relatives what I pay in taxes, they're all of them shocked. So that may say that I have relatives in fancy cities, but it's not that. I have relatives in small towns across the U.S. and we pay a tax rate that shocks all of them. But what I really want to say is that if you're proposing to drop the tax rate to make life more affordable here, to make life easier on the people that don't have as much means, please remember our schools are filled with kids that have really hard lives. And if you take away funding, if you make it harder for our schools to operate, you are making those children's lives even harder. You are making it so they don't have the same teacher throughout the course of the year. You are making it so that they don't have a substitute, they have a screen. Remember those children and please keep the tax rate at what it is. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Gretchen Bishop, 220 Institute Street. And I haven't really thought through what I wanted to say because I'm saying it very impromptu. I don't know what the tax rate would be, but I do think that you should make it clear what if you drop the tax rate, what services would be dropped? It won't be the school budget. That was made clear at the work session. Yes, I agree that maybe we need more services, but could you please clarify when you discuss this to the public here what services will be dropped if you lower the rate. Now, I do think Brenda Mead had a good point about how you're going to pay for your budget, your expenses, if you drop the rate, depending on sales tax, lodging tax, meal tax. Maybe that's precarious. That seems like a good argument to me. But keeping it at 89 is not going to drop any services. And I just think you need to be very clear to people, what is the impact of dropping the rate? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, Council, for the opportunity. My name is Thomas Wagner. I live at 164 North Coulter Street. My wife Pamela has already spoken tonight. And I don't have that much new to say, but I think the weight of many more citizens speaking is something worthwhile. I think the idea that we know exactly, that Brenda Mead proposed, that we know exactly what our property taxes will bring in, and that all of the other taxes that we have, meals, lodgings, whatever they are unknown. We have a bad year where we don't have as many people eating in restaurants, or all of those kind of things that can't be predicted. We could run into a very big problem. So I would urge you all to think about those things. I think the idea of transparency and letting us know as citizens what exactly would be dropped if we lower the taxes to the degree that has been suggested, because I don't have an idea where we would be losing, what services we would be losing, but I speak in favor of keeping the tax rate where it is, or certainly no lower than the 89 cents that's been suggested. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas.
Anyone else? Last call. All right. Nobody on Zoom said. Public hearing is now ended. We have no motion on this. No, sir. All right, that brings us to item E, which is a consideration of council procedure memorandum number 20, City Council Town Halls.
Mr. Blair is gonna take this item for us.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Class B City Council. Before you tonight is the proposed City Council Procedure Memorandum number 20. As has been stated earlier tonight, I know that 4 of you, 2 each, have had town halls, or what you call listening sessions. This provides a procedure for council to follow. I'll just briefly hit a few highlights. There could be no more than 2 members of council at these town halls. That's due to the Freedom of Information Act. And due to that, it says that transaction of public business won't be occurring at these town halls. This is an opportunity for you to listen and to take questions, if you so choose, about particular topics. The policy does touch on the fact that you set the rules for these as far as speaking time. You have your procedure memorandum, it sets 5-minute limits for public hearings. This gives you flexibility as to the time, or whether you want to have a back and forth with audience members. It also allows you, and I want to go through a hypothetical, you set the topic for this. So you can say, this is a quote-unquote round robin. Feel free to ask anything you like about city affairs. You can instead, as we do with public hearings, say this town hall is specifically about the budget or recycling. And you can limit the topic to that. One other thing I do want to highlight, again, you will have a lot of discretion in terms of questions and answers answers as to how you want to handle that, but there's one rule that legally is an absolute no-no, which is, and it's embodied in this proposed memorandum, you can't discriminate against a speaker due to their viewpoint. So for instance, if you had a public or a town hall on recycling, and you knew that I was going to come before you and advocate for a recycling site in Gypsy Hill Park right next to the duck pond, and you're like, that's never going to happen. So when you saw me stand up, or when I started to speak, you said, no, I don't agree with that, sit down. That gets you in legal trouble. You can have give and takes, you can take questions, you can limit it to topics, but you cannot discriminate against somebody if you allow them to speak based on their viewpoint and what they are saying to you on that topic or topics. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilors, do you have any questions?
No, that sounds good, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, you all right?
Can you hear us, Mark? Oh, he's on mute.
I'm sorry, yes, I am.
Okay, you all right? Any questions?
I'm fine with that.
Good.
So, Mayor Claffey,
Councilor Woods?
I move that the Staunton City Council adopt council procedure memorandum number 20.
I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor and a second by Councilor Holmes. Mr. Kester, please call roll.
Mr. Airwood. Aye. Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Ms. Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
That brings us to item F, which is a presentation on the process regarding the construction of a City of Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court facility. Ms. Bowder.
I'm going to run the slides tonight. I don't think this item needs any introduction. This has been a very hot topic the last couple of weeks, but we're here tonight to share with the community. Get to the PowerPoint.
There are a couple seats right up front if anyone's comfortable. Sorry, Leslie. If anyone's comfortable breaking through.
Okay. Yeah, if folks want to come in and see the seats, that'd be great. There's mics in the hallways, you just won't be able to see it. So, and I'll say this up front. This will be posted on a website that I'm going to show at the end of this presentation, but you can get to it through our homepage too. So, okay. So we have several staff who are going to speak tonight. We're going to let Mr. Blair, our city attorney, start with the legal considerations, and he's going to provide some history of that and some context behind this. I'm going to then walk through the timeline and history of actions to date. That's a long presentation because there have been a lot of things happening. And so I'm going to go through it quickly, and I'm losing my voice too. So excuse me if I start to sound a little raspy. But there's just a lot. The intent of that was to show all the activity that has actually been happening. Mr. Johnson, our Public Works Director, is going to then go through the assessment and evaluation of potential sites and buildings. And then we'll do we'll summarize the next steps at the end. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Blair, who's going to kick off with the legal considerations. I got one.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Beauregard, Mr. Mayor, Council. I want to start this presentation talking about the legal process and where we are today. So before you will see the picture of our current facility at 6 East Johnson Street. And that facility, just to give some of the audience members and individuals who may be watching, houses both the Staunton Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court as well as the Augusta County Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. Also has the Augusta County General District. September the 13th of 2021, there were two what are called show causes issued pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-1643. One of these show causes related to the Augusta County Circuit Courthouse. The other show cause, and that was addressed solely to Augusta County. However, the other show cause was issued regarding the facility that was on the previous slide. And as stated, Staunton does house its juvenile and domestic relations court there with Augusta County in a combined facility. So, what is a show cause? Well, a show cause is, pursuant to that statute, the court found that the facility itself at 6 East Johnson Street was out of repair. It could also, there are other aspects of that, but I think out of repair is one of the exact phrases, and that's probably the best way to describe it if you've been in the facility. In effect, what the show cause says is, city and county, please show cause to the court why this facility is not out of repair. Subsequent to receiving that show cause in December of during October and November of 2021, there were discussions with Augusta County about the possibility of the city taking ownership of both 6 East Johnson Street as well as the Augusta County Circuit Courthouse. In December of 2021, there was a proposal before the council, and that proposal would have transferred both of those facilities as well as 3 other buildings in exchange for $1 and the city's support of legislation that would have allowed Augusta County to remove its court facilities to Verona. At that time, the City Council in December of 2021 voted to table that proposal until November of 2022. Subsequent to that, the General Assembly enacted legislation which permitted Augusta County to conduct a referendum in November of 2022 as to whether it would move its courts to Verona or remain in Staunton. And I won't go through all the details of that, but there were 2 proposals developed by the county that were placed on the ballot for county voters in November of 2022. This was special legislation because the county had been, by what's called general law, prohibited from having a referendum for 10 years from the date of its last referendum. However, this special legislation allowed it to conduct that referendum years earlier than the 10-year time period. In February of 2022, we had the show cause issued for approximately 5 months at that time. After consulting with council, neither Augusta County nor the city of Staunton contested the fact that the facility at 6 East Johnson Street was not in adequate condition to conduct court proceedings. That court order then stated that the city itself would need to provide a space needs assessment, a schematic concept, a description and schedule of the work that it would provide, for a facility that it would provide for its court facilities, for juvenile and domestic relations. Now, I'd like to talk to you. There is another statute, Virginia Code Section 15.2-1638. And that code section states that cities and counties have to provide court facilities for their courts. So, the city itself did not take possession of 6 East Johnson Street in December of 2021. The city also did not contest the fact that the current facility was not adequate to continue to conduct juvenile and domestic relations court proceedings. 15.21638 also states that the city or county where the court is located has to own the facility. Now, Augusta County owns this current facility, but we are in effect operating a combined court. But Augusta County, which is the owner of that facility, will be moving out in November 1st of 2025 if their new courthouse is built on time. So the city itself is going to have to provide a juvenile and domestic relations court. That is pursuant to this Virginia Code section 15.2-1638. So we go to the court order that was agreed to by the city and the Commonwealth of Virginia. And Ms. Beauregard's presentation will talk about specific steps regarding the schematic concept, the description and schedule of work, and space needs assessment. You'll find that it was a pretty detailed process. After that court order was entered, we started to comply with it. There was back and forth with the state. November 8th of 2022, Augusta County formally voted to move all of its court facilities to Verona in its referendum. So that leaves the city knowing that come November 1st, 2025, it is likely Augusta County will be moving out of the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court building. And again, the county owns that building. The city does not have an ownership interest. So after consultation with council, we get to the March 31st, 2023 court order that was presented, and the court has now signed that order. That order establishes a timeline based on the November 1st, 2025 anticipated move-out date of Augusta County, so that the city of Staunton will have a facility to have the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. As the slide states, it has a schedule for schematic drawings. They're going to be due July 15th of this year. Final design development drawings, and then final construction drawings, which will be due in January of 2024. It also has an actual construction date beginning April 18th of 2024. You look through the timeline, that's about 18 and a half months to build a facility before the November 1st, 2025 deadline. The order itself does obligate the city to provide a court facility. And it is true, I know I've heard individuals and received emails that effectively, if we can go back, Virginia Code section 15.2-1643 says the court can't require the city to build a new facility or replacement facility. And while that's true, 15.2-1638 is a different requirement, which does require us to provide a juvenile and domestic relations court. It also requires that we own that building. So the court order in effect says we will provide a new facility for juvenile and domestic relations court by November 1st of 2025. I know, again, I've received inquiries about the order itself. If you read the order itself, while that requirement is there, it does give the city abilities to ask for extensions of timelines that the court may grant. It also, I think it is worth pointing out, I've been dealing with the Commonwealth of Virginia and to let the citizens know The Attorney General's office actually represents the judges in this matter. The judges don't represent themselves. The Attorney General's office has hired an individual named Ford Stevens who works at a Richmond law firm to represent it. Mr. Johnston and myself have been working with Mr. Stevens the entire time to try to work out this schedule and this plan so that there will be a juvenile court facility by November 1st, 2025. Mr. Stevens has been nothing but accommodating. While we have had back and forths and some arguments over our schematics and some of the details of the schedule of work, he has been very reasonable. Again, he is focused as much on the November 1st date as we are. However, it is, as I stated, he is also very reasonable. I do not believe that if there is an effort to ask for an amendment to the court order, that there's going, it's, as long as it's a rational, reasonable idea of how to get that court in place. In our dealings with Mr. Stevens, he's been nothing but accommodating, and I believe that's a possibility if that is ultimately the desire. I do, though, want one last thing I want to state about the March 31st, 2023 court order is that it does list what we call the Hardy Line as the potential site. You take a look at the court file. We were really, per that February 2022 order, we needed to have something in by about mid-December, depending on how you calculate the dates, as to providing where the court was going to locate. There were extensions that Mr. Stevens agreed to in December 2022, January, and February of 2023. That again gave us time. Ms. Beauregard and Mr. Johnston will go through some of the details of what occurred during those months, but we need to have something presented by March 31st, 2023 in terms of the site, the schedule, and the council. After consultation, I think it's fair to describe it as reluctantly said the Hardy lot would be where we would locate. However, as stated, and I know we will go over this, that is not, while it's a court order, I do believe that Mr. Stevens, if there is some alternative site, some sort of, and again, it has to be a realistic alternative presented, I don't see any reason why he would object to that. One last thing I should say that I want to go over that I've heard concerns about is guidelines for court facilities, and what are they? They are established ultimately by the Virginia judiciary, and the question I hear the most is, well, are they guidelines? Are they regulations? Are they standards? They're guidelines. Guidelines mean the following. They mean this is what the court system believes would make an adequate juvenile and domestic relations court. And here are the guidelines we would like you to follow. However, it is worth pointing out, and guidelines, again, there is some malleability concerning, let's say, if the guidelines themselves call for a certain square footage of storage space. And we had an existing site that instead of the Hardy lot, or that wasn't our plan, if we had said we were going to acquire a site, and that site only had, say, 1,400 square feet of storage, the guidelines required 1,600 square feet. There's malleability there, but what has been communicated to us, Mr. Johnston and myself, and it's not just from Mr. Stevens, but it's been by architects who've worked with the state on other courthouse projects, is that accessibility, which is required by the Americans with Disabilities Act, security and circulation, those guidelines, that's where the state draws its line in the sand. Accessibility, security, and circulation. But again, when we talk about guidelines and the malleability in those guidelines, things such as the size of a conference room, the size of a witness room, perhaps the size of a courtroom, depending on what kind of footage we're talking about and if it doesn't affect security, those are things that are malleable and we can agree upon to perhaps deviate from the guidelines. They are not set in stone. However, it has been communicated to us, and through talking with architects who've worked with the state on other courthouse projects, security, accessibility, and circulation of personnel in the facilities, that's where the state draws its line when it comes to the guidelines. With that, I will turn it over back to Ms. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. I'm going to start with the December 9th City Council meeting that Mr. Blair already spoke about. And this was the meeting where City Council had an MOU in front of them to acquire the 5 properties, including the court facilities, and to support legislation to relocate the courts to Verona. That was tabled until November 2022. Then this timeline combines both city council meetings and then actions that the staff took between staff and the state. So it's long, so please bear with me, but it's important to see all of this because it shows the amount of effort that has been taken. And on January 11th, there was a special council meeting called to discuss that December decision. That included a public comment period, and I'm sorry this is cut off, but what that says is no quorum was present and the meeting did not occur. 2 days later at the regular council meeting, during that meeting, there was a discussion about the JDR court facility and a public hearing was held that evening. Then 5 days later, staff engaged Thompson and Litton to perform a space needs assessment at a cost of $7,300. And I'll go over the cost as what is spent to date at the end of my presentation. You'll see a total. On February 10th, City Council held a closed meeting to discuss the show cause. And then on February 15th, Mr. Blair already spoke about this. There was a court order filed that provided a plan to correct non-compliance, including the space needs assessment, which had to be submitted by April 12th, 2022, followed by a schematic plan and a schedule. On March 28th, Thompson and Litton provided the space needs assessment to the Commonwealth that included 20-year projections. So it wasn't just looking for the immediate future, but for the far future, what the courthouse needed. And then on May 2nd, the Commonwealth submitted its first comment letter to the city. We're calling that comment letter number 1. And you're going to see comment letter number 1, 2, 3 as we go along. And this is in terms of the space needs assessment. On May 27th, Thompson and Litton submitted the revised space needs assessment to the city, responding to that same comment letter number 1. And then on June 3rd, Thompson and Litton provided the city additional information, acknowledging that the site selection was required before all Commonwealth comments can be addressed, but we did not have a site at that time. On June 9th, City Council held a closed meeting to discuss the show cause and then also began to explore some downtown sites. After that meeting, staff began to explore those. On June 22nd, the city staff engaged with Thompson and Litton to perform an assessment for those sites at a cost of $4,700. And then on July 14th, Thompson and Litton submitted that same site assessment report on the 2 properties. And that report deemed each site unsuitable based on the space needs assessment. On July 22nd, with no site identified, Thompson and Litton submitted to the city a conceptual floor plan based on a generic, non-specific court site. So we have a floor plan now, but no site. On August 1st, the city submitted a revised space needs assessment to the Commonwealth, including the non-site floor plan. And this is submittal number 2. And then on August 3rd, the Commonwealth addressed items of non-compliance in the second submittal, including the need for a more detailed schematic plan and an accelerated development schedule, which is comment letter number 2. And the city was required to respond by December 1st, 2022. which is the date Mr. Blair had brought up previously as well during his comments. On August 16th, our city engineer and public works director did a technical review of the Augusta County Circuit Court and the district court buildings under the authority of the county. And they also deemed these sites unsuitable based on the space needs assessment. And then on August 25th, City Council held a closed meeting to discuss the show cause again and held a discussion regarding the downtown sites that I had mentioned previously. On September 16th, the city engaged with Thompson and Litton to provide a more detailed floor plan and speculative preliminary design for, again, a non-specific site. This was $9,500. On October 13th, there was actually an open meeting on this during the work session. And the discussion was held to take a position on whether the city council would take a position on Augusta County's referendum to relocate its courts. The majority of council determined that the city would take no position on the referendum. So then on October 21st, 2022, Thompson and Litton submitted to the city a more detailed schematic plan in response to comment letter number 2 and an estimated site development schedule. And on October 31st, the city submitted the revised space needs assessment to the Commonwealth, which is submittal number 3. Mr. Blair mentioned earlier the Augusta County referendum, which occurred on November 8th, 2022, and county voters overwhelmingly elected to move the county court facilities to Verona. The next day, November 9th, the Commonwealth submitted a letter addressing, again, terms of noncompliance in submittal number 3, including the need to address minimum space needs determined in the assessment, security, circulation issues, which were mentioned earlier, the site layout and building appearance, and this is comment letter number 3. And the next day after that, City Council held a closed meeting post-referendum to discuss next steps. 5 days after that, the city issued a request for proposal for realtor services with a submission deadline of December 9th, 2022. And then on November 29th, the city submitted Thompson and Litton's revised schematic plans for, again, a non-specific site with a cover letter in response to the Commonwealth's comment letter number 3, and this is submittal number 4. December 9th, the RFP deadline for the realtor expires. We have no submissions for that. And then on December 21st, the Commonwealth submitted a letter addressing, again, terms of noncompliance in submittal number 4, including additional space needs and security concerns, and this is comment letter number 4. The city decided to go ahead and reissue the request for proposals for the realtor services with a deadline of January 4th, 2023, and that was done on December 21st. Finally, on January 17th, 2023, the contract for realtor services was awarded to Cottonwood Commercial LLC. 2 days after that, the city submitted Thompson and Litton's revised schematic plans for a non-specific site in response to the comment letter number 4, and this is submittal number 5. On the 31st of January, the city submitted to the Commonwealth a revised estimated site development schedule, and this is submittal number 6. And then at this time, no further comments were received from the Commonwealth. So 6 submittals, and Mr. Johnson's crossing his fingers over there. So between the months of January and February, the realtor explored potential sites and engaged with city staff. And then on March 9th, City Council held a closed meeting to discuss the potential sites. On March 23rd, Council held another closed meeting to discuss potential sites. And on March 29th, City announced the intent to procure design services for a JVR District Court facility on the Hardy lot and posted a request for proposal. And that's the time when the press release was released also. The information was made public. And then Mr. Blair spoke about the deadline of March 31st for the court order that also identified the Hardy lot. And then on April 5th, City Council had a special closed meeting to discuss the show cause and next steps, including reviewing additional sites. So this is just a summary of expenditures to date. I know there's been some questions about this. So to date, on everything you just heard, this adds up to about $22,000. So the $7,300 I mentioned earlier for the space needs assessment, the $4,700 for the site assessment on those 2 downtown properties the previous summer, and the $9,500 for a speculative preliminary design for a non-specific site. Now, proposed expenditures to date, and these have all been discussed as part of the budget process, is council appropriated $2.3 million from American Rescue Plan Act funds during this fiscal year to be dedicated or allocated towards the JDR court project. We didn't say that they would be for design or anything in particular, but it would just be applied to the project itself. And then for the fiscal year 24 budget, there is a $10 million bond issuance. The debt payment for that is budgeted in the 24 budget in anticipation that we will probably need to borrow some money to pay for this project. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Johnston, who's going to walk through the assessment and evaluation of potential site plan buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, everybody else. My involvement in this really started once the decision was made that the court was going to need to leave the building at 6 East Johnson Street. And as Mr. Blair talked about, and as the city manager has outlined, initially that was just getting our hands around what is it that we need to build. Remember that we are running a joint court currently. So it's very difficult to ascertain what do they need, what do we need, what we both need. It's not as easy as just looking at what we currently have and cutting and pasting that elsewhere. So through all the iterations back and forth with the Commonwealth, we finally landed on what we feel is an acceptable need document. And it has a lot of elements, certainly square footage. We need to have the square footage to create the facility that the Commonwealth has asked us to create. To some extent, it's going to require us to create. Acreage, if we're outside of the central business district, then that site needs to not only have a building, but the adequate parking with the adequate setbacks and all those site conditions as well. So that creates an acreage issue. Location is a concern. Obviously, from a public works standpoint, I would love for all city buildings to be relatively close to each other. It makes it easier for me and my staff to clean them, to maintain them. But the big issue on location was public transportation. We want to make sure that folks who need to get to this court facility can get there by public transportation. Accessibility, as Mr. Blair has mentioned, non-negotiable, as well it should be for all city facilities. Affordability is always an issue, and availability. And availability really is about time. Mr. Bears mentioned that date of 1 November 2025 isn't moving, and every day it gets one day closer. So immediate availability of the site, the availability to get started was a concern as well. Now, we've been looking really about at 10 sites. 2 of those are still being worked on, so we're not going to discuss those. I will talk about some of the other ones. Here they are in sort of an overview. We'll sort of talk about them in clumps, starting with the west end and then sort of working our way towards the highway. So on the west end, there was a large site on the food line on West Beverly. There's the former Unified factory on Morris Mill Road, and the Chestnut Hills Shopping Center there at the intersection of Gruber and West Beverly. In the Gypsy Hill Park area, the Grace Christian School Complex downtown, the former Grand Piano Building right next door to us here. Like I said, we did get into the Augusta County Courts buildings, obviously the Hardy lot. And then out closer to the highway, site next to the quarry off of Frontier Drive. So we'll kind of go through them. This is the first one. Again, 2 dimensions doesn't do this site justice. That's a big old hill behind food line. And if you ever find yourself behind the food line, you can see that lot that they're on is pretty much chiseled out of the rock. So the big issue with this, it's big enough certainly, but it's the site development costs. There's There's not a lot of flat land there. There is a little bit of flat close to the top. That would require snaking the road up there to get there. And I'm putting my public works director hat on. We have two water mains that transverse that site sort of diagonally across that need to be avoided. So this site was just too difficult, especially when, again, we talk about availability. To have this site ready by 1 November is an awfully big ask. There's also the issue of transportation. It does have a West Beverly address, and the bus does go by that address, but the actual facility would be the better part of a quarter mile up the hill, which is not ideal. However, our realtor still is talking with that owner of this, and they're waiting for a final decision. But this one is prohibitively difficult at this point. Here's the former Unified site out in Morris Mill Road. Again, it's a decent sized lot. It is encumbered with some buildings that are not exactly courtroom ready. But the biggest issue with that with our realtor is he's getting no cooperation from the current owner. And as I mentioned, we just don't have time to get into a long and drawn out back and forth over a site. There's also existing residents on that site. That complicates it a bit. So it's not too far from the existing bus route, but it is not on the current bus route. So now I'll get you honest. This was our first choice. Right? This was when we sat down with our realtor. This is the first place we said, you gotta go get us this. Right on the bus route. Nice big site, already flat. Buildings in not great shape, but we really wanted this one, but it's not for sale. And again, we just don't have the luxury to wait until it is. Grace Christian School, that's another place that's got an amazing location right there across from Gypsy Hill Park. Good access, bus access. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, but it's got some interesting buildings on it. The problem is Grace Christian won't be done with those buildings until 2025. So their starting line is our finish line. So this one sort of fails the availability test. That will find out. The Grand Piano Building, right next door. Now we're going to start talking about some of those specific requirements of the Commonwealth Act. So this building, as you can see, is hemmed in on 4 sides. It's got City Hall on one side, bookstore on the other, Beverly Street, and then the parking garage behind it. There's really no way to provide the secure parking, secure circulation, and accessibility required with nowhere to go outside of that building. It's 13,800 square feet. It's a little small, right? The space needs assessment comes in a little bit closer to 20,000 square feet. So while I love the location right next, like I said, if I had my druthers, all city buildings would be adjacent to one another. It's just not the right building. Let's talk about these two buildings. Same basic issue. There are existential problems with both these facilities that make them prohibitively difficult to accommodate a court of any size. Secure parking. Neither of them have adequate secure parking, nor do they have the footprint to provide it. Secure circulation. When we talk secure circulation, I'm going to make it a little wonky here. But essentially, there are 3 populations that need to arrive separately and securely to a courtroom: the judge, the public, and anyone who is detained. They each need to enter through their own entrance. They need to travel on their own elevators, through their own hallways, and emerge into the courtroom. Paths never crossing. The Augusta County Circuit Court has 0 elevators in 3. The Augusta County District Court would need additional elevators, but would also need additional parking. Judges need to be able to park and walk securely into the building to get to their court. And this is one of those areas where the Commonwealth, throughout all 5 of their responses to us, has always said, you have to toe the line on this. You have to meet the requirements. And it's those, I mean, as far as the, I mean, look, one of those buildings is gorgeous. The other one is red. But neither of them have what it takes to meet the requirements of any court, whether it's ours, the county's, JNDR, circuit district, whatever. There's a Hardy parking lot. And I guess the big plus, a couple of big pluses here. Obviously, it's a few doors down from our existing judicial center. It gives the sheriff a fairly tight package to maintain. It's certainly close to existing city facilities that helps me and my team a bit. It's on multiple bus routes. It's a decent size lot. Again, 29,000 square feet. Multi-story building, we would probably not need to encumber the entire lot, but we would have to put the right building on it. The big issue here, as we were looking at, coming up on March 31st and having to present to the Commonwealth a plan, was that it was available. That we could tell the Commonwealth, this is our plan and it's a legitimate plan because we already own the property. And so it had availability that turns into schedule, and it was that schedule that allowed us to meet the demands of the court order. So that is what we like about Hardy Lot. Out here is an industrial parcel, sort of penned in between the mini storage, the quarry, and the auto salvage yard. You don't have to be Rodney Rhodes to know that is an industrial site, not a commercial site. And off the bus routes, a fair amount of site work to do. It's a relatively low spot with some drainage issues. Also, again, creates issues for the sheriff and myself to cover down on a faraway satellite campus out on the edge of town. But it is large. But it was, the accessibility wasn't great. The availability was a little sketchy. More than anything else, it was the extensive site work that scared us off with this one.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to wrap up by talking about some next steps. Staff is continuing to review 12 potential locations. 2 of these were mentioned earlier that they were on the previous list and they're still under consideration. There are 10 new suggestions that staff have received. We're not telling you what these are, obviously, because doing so would definitely adversely affect the city's bargaining, our negotiation, and again, going back to that affordability piece that Mr. Johnson brought up earlier, we are trying to keep this an affordable project that limits the effect of cost to the city and to the taxpayer. So that is why we're not revealing what these other sites are yet. And I know this was mentioned earlier, but if an alternative location that meets the same timeline is identified, the city will approach the Commonwealth about amending the March 31st, 2023 order. So it's not as much about the location as it is about the timeline at this point. The city is going to continue design process the RFP for the Hardy Lot. City Council and staff need this information, so we're going to continue that process. That's going to be important information for us to have. And then we're going to continue to look at developing the long-term financial strategy for the capital, and especially the operating costs, which we spoke about in the budget presentation earlier, that we don't really have a firm grasp on what those operating costs will be yet. So we'll need to be working on that as well. Finally, this presentation will be posted here, and we'll be posting information. If you go to just standardva.us, it'll be right there. I think it'll be right there, but if you can just type in courthouse to get to the direct site. We'll be keeping that updated as frequently as we can, starting with this presentation. So that is the end of staff presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions the city council has at this time.
Council members, any questions?
I do. Melissa, can you go back to that previous slide? Yeah, I understand that you're continuing with the design RFP process for the Hardy lot. In the event that the Hardy lot is not used, how can that be sort of transitioned to another property?
Want Mr. Johnson to address
Yeah.
that?
That would honestly depend on what the alternate site is.
Right.
In terms of how similar it is to REP, how, if it's close, if it's far, if it's, but more than likely the RFP would either have to be amended or a new RFP submitted based on what that new site looks like. That is an acquisition strategy conversation we have in the business office. And, again, we can receive proposals, we can analyze proposals. There's a lot of things we can do that don't commit us to anything, but allow us to keep moving forward. I'll be honest, in that every day that ticks by that I'm not doing something to help with that November 1st date is a day wasting a day on that. So we'll continue to do that. If we need to move on to an alternative, there are procedures for doing that. The specifics will be very site-specific.
Thank you.
Questions?
Maybe this question is for Mr. Blair. Are there any legal penalties that we might incur if we miss a deadline?
Well, let's talk about that. The deadlines themselves could be enforced through the court order if the Commonwealth so desired. Saying that, again, there is language in there that talks about deadlines and agreeing to extend deadlines. Again, concerning that, Mr. Stevens has been nothing but accommodating when we've asked. Now, I do want to make it clear they have an interest. This will be a process that started in September of 2021. The state expects the city of Staunton to provide a juvenile court by November 1st of 2025. If you read the order, there is provisions in there that if we take good faith steps and commercially, due to commercial, I forget the exact verbiage, commercial reasons, meaning construction issues, site issues, it can be extended. Now, I think even if it is extended, we're going to have to provide a temporary court. And when you talk about legal penalties, if we don't have a juvenile court facility to have juvenile court on November 1st, 2025, I think the state could file a contempt motion to say, well, the state would on behalf of the judges to say we need a court to conduct juvenile court proceedings. So I don't, again, the court order is there. Certainly it has a schedule, but it does provide the schedule can be extended. It also provides that if we run into issues once we start construction, it can be extended then. Or renovation. I do want to make that clear. I say construction, it could be that we ultimately end up with an existing structure, depending on where we ultimately land. But we do have to have a juvenile court on November 1st, 2025. And again, that's assuming that the county, their construction stays on schedule. That's their planned move-out date from the facility at 6 East Johnson Street.
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
Hey, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark, I was just tagging along with Michelle, which she said, and so the public needs to know that, and what Jeff was saying, getting the RFP doesn't cost us anything to get it, and what's more important is that whether we use that party lot or a different location, getting the RFP will at least give us a ballpark figure about what a court is going to at least run us. So, I mean, that's the good thing about the RFP is it at least gives us a ballpark figure what we're looking at, and it's not costing us anything to do it.
Councilor Robinson, the RFP is for design services. So those proposals will give us an idea of what the design would cost. The actual construction cost would obviously be a function of the design as it is completed. But it would certainly give us insights into the process to a degree we currently don't have.
Exactly. Thank you.
I'd also like to mention that, we have been having meetings, and this hasn't been an ignored issue by any matter of means. But the reason we have them in closed sessions is because personnel matters and real estate procurement is to be done in a closed session. And the very good reason sits less than a block away from us. The Atlantic Union Bank was assessed at $3.5 to $4 million several years ago. When Augusta County attempted to purchase it for their court, the price was in excess of $8 million. Eventually, that's what threw Augusta County's hands up, and they said, we can't deal with the city. So therefore, we go into a closed meeting, and council is dependent upon city staff to go out and investigate some of this stuff. And I know I've been reading the letters. We've received many letters on our laptop this week. and everyone assumes that we're going to have a task force that's going to walk up and down Beverly Street saying, got any good spots? And unfortunately, we're just not in a position to do that. We will have to continue to do real estate procurement from a closed meeting status. And we're dependent upon staff, and you can see they've had numerous correspondence back and forth. And it's really not us walking up and down the street with a clipboard. So please don't think we're not attentive to the needs of the city, but this whole situation requires a closed meeting status. Any other comments?
I'd just like to say that I don't think one council person on this dais wants to use the hard lot. I mean, it's just, we had to put something in to satisfy the March 31st date. And I've been driving around town looking at places, seeing if I see a piece of property that would even look like it'd be close to something we could use. And I really personally do not want to see it downtown, as I don't think it wants to, or at the Hardy lot, I should say.
Right.
I would call the Hardy lot a placeholder in my mind, at least. It's way down my list on that. Ideally, as we've talked about, a renovation of an existing building downtown in the core that could be used. We find one that is workable in that. The Hardy lot is a absolute, to me, last ditch potential. And I think all of us are in agreement on that.
Amen.
Yes.
So maybe it's not quite as you all see it, but we have been working the issue.
Well, we do have to have something, and I really appreciate staff's efforts and energy into putting the time into looking for other places and listening to some suggestions from the community. And it's my hope that we can find something else. And I trust that the staff has the community's best interest at heart, and that something appropriate can be found.
I agree. And we've run them ragged all over town.
Yes, everyone here on this dais has come up with a suggestion.
Third parties chasing real estates, it's just throwing them out there, and yeah, they're chasing their own tails on this.
Anything further from members of council?
Yeah. Thanks, staff, for everything that we put them through. I will admit that.
Any further comments from members of council? That's going to wrap up our item F, presentation of the process regarding the construction. Thank you, staff. Brings us to matters from the city manager. Ms. Bogart.
I have a few things before my voice goes out for the night. Sorry. First is the recycling center is going to have to be closed for a few weekends, Saturdays in May. And we'll be putting more information out about this. On May 6th and 20th, there's fishing derbies happening, which is right next to the center, so the recycling center can't be there when those fishing derbies are happening. But the center will be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Thursday, May 4th and May 18th to accommodate weekend recyclers. So we will stay open later on those 2 days. And again, you don't have to remember this. We will get this pushed out. And I believe the signs gone up at the center. So there are actually signs at the recycling center right now with these dates as well. And I'll say something at the next council meeting too. On May 11th, regular city council meetings will start 30 minutes earlier at 7. That does not affect work sessions, which will probably start at 5 in most cases, but this meeting we're in right now will actually start 30 minutes earlier at 7, and we'll continue to push out reminders as that date approaches as well. And then finally, this is kind of exciting, pavement marking was deferred during the pandemic. And you may have noticed that there's some areas in the city that need some help, but crews are going to be working throughout the summer, so please be patient. And I think it's almost like the whole city is going to get remarked practically, which is fantastic news. So we ask everyone to be patient and follow the traffic control measures, but this will be an exciting summer. Again, I think the whole city is going to get remarked, so that's great. And that's all I have this evening, Mayor Laffey.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that brings us to matters from the public. This part of the city council's agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. A copy of the Staunton City Council's Matters from the Public rules are available in paper form at the clerk's desk and online on the City of Staunton's webpage. You are asked to familiarize yourself with these rules before commenting. Please come to the podium or begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. Would anyone like to speak?
Go ahead, Richard, cut in line.
I'm Richard Bolstein, Oak Terrace, Staunton. I just have questions, so and maybe Mr. Blair could answer this. There's this thing called eminent domain. Why cannot the city force the sale of the lot on Gruber and West Beverly? That is the number one choice. So that's a question. Can you answer that, Mr. Blair, or can you not answer anything right now?
I believe this time is not set up for question and answer time.
Well, I'd like that question answered.
Sure.
And I'd also like a review of why we didn't buy 5 buildings for $1. I mean, that sounds like a good deal to me. And for one thing, the current JDR building could, if we owned it, could have been raised for a parking lot. That's it.
I'm not going to ask any questions. My name is Thomas Wagner. I spoke once before. Again, thank you to the council for the opportunity to do this, and all the city management people also who have spoken so openly and given us an idea of what's going on here. I make an assumption when these things happen that everybody here that there's no perniciousness going on, that everybody here, sitting out here, sitting up there, all the city staff has one thing in mind, which is to do something that's the best for this city and keeps this city going in the great direction that it has been going in for years now, certainly since we've been here, and that's already 7 years on. It's crazy, but that's what it is. And I would like to say about the Hardy parking lot, I'm the current board president of the Arcadia project. And we've been working very hard for the last few years to bring the old Dixie, the historic theater at the corner of Market Street, right across Market Street from the Hardy lot, back online. And in talking to our board and other people around, we think that just for us personally, that building a building on that parking lot will make it much more difficult for us to secure the kind of funding grant-wise that we need, because sometimes that question gets asked often in grants is, what is your parking? So it makes it much more difficult for us to succeed in our project, and we're in a place where we think we've found a path to completion. But this would be a big roadblock in that. Having talked to all of the business owners, or many of them, and the other nonprofits who are in that area who depend on that, and that would be, of course, the Shakespeare Center and the Woodrow Wilson Museum, and all depend in one way or another on that lot. So I'm here to say, and I've heard you all nod your heads or speak directly, as Brad did, saying that's my last choice, is to have that parking lot become a building in that end of our town. So I'm hoping that we can find another place, that there's goodwill to find another alternative, and I've talked to a number of people about some places that haven't been considered yet. So I hope those things will be considered and we can move forward without having to. The other thing that came to mind is that West End. I don't know anything about eminent domain and what's possible, but it seems like there's been a lot of talk about doing things in the West End, building up the West End, giving the West End some attention that the east part of Beverly Street has already had, and this seems like a perfect opportunity to be able to do that. So thanks very much to Kathy.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Pamela Mason-Wagner. I bring to you a petition signed by 28 nonprofit leaders in the city requesting that you not locate the courthouse on the Hardy lot. They include signers from American Shakespeare Center, Anna's House, Arcadia Project, Augusta County Historical Society, Heifetz International Music Institute, Staunton Music Festival, Virginia Baroque Performance Academy, Temple House of Israel, and Woodrow Wilson Presidential Library. Many of the nonprofit leaders who signed this petition wanted to be here this evening, but they are celebrating with Pamela Fox at Hotel 24 this evening. I also come to you as a citizen. I took it upon myself to create a Google Doc where people could make suggestions of buildings. I printed it out for you. Right now there are 7 buildings that you presumably have not looked at based on the presentation that we just heard. I'm going to present this to you. I'm also willing to make the Google Doc public to everyone. I feel like you do a request for proposals. Why not do a request for properties? Obviously, the negotiations need to happen behind closed doors, but there's no reason you can't crowdsource the ideas. So many people in this room know about properties that you may not know about. And so far, everything I've heard tonight, there's no avenue for people to make suggestions of properties that you might want to consider. So I did walk around Mayor Claffey with the clipboard, and I did take it upon myself to be a personal task force, and a lot of people came to me and said, what about this? What about this? So I'm going to offer both of these papers to you tonight, and I sincerely hope that you will find another solution other than the Hardy lot.
Thank you, Pamela.
Thank you.
Hello again. Amy Ratchford, 1001 Selma Boulevard. I'm not going to talk about all the problems with the Hardy lot because it sounds like we're all in agreement on that. My concerns fall to the process of this. I understand. Coming from the school board, we went through a similar process of needing to have conversations about individual properties behind closed doors. My concern is we didn't know about this need until recently. We have not been part of the knowledge that a new court facility was going to be needed. And that is something that would have come up in the talk about the tax rate. That was something that would have come up in a number of different ways. had we, during any time over the past over a year, known that this was going to be a thing, right? And that is a serious problem with transparency of governance. I'd also like to suggest that while yes, the November 2025 date is a firm date, knowing that there is some flexibility with possible extensions, I have a feeling Augusta County won't kick us out if we need to extend our time in that facility, continuing to be grandfathered during that time period. So I would like to put that out to the public that that might be a possibility. And then my final, and honestly, one of my biggest concerns is the fact that during the budget process last year, the schools, when we said we are not asking for the 1.8 million that was cut during the pandemic to be reinstated into our operating budget, we were assured that that money would be provided to us as a lump sum in order to help with all of the capital things that the schools need. I have recently learned that the schools have been told that that has happened. It has not happened, and now I see a $2 million need for this facility that has not previously been discussed, coming from ARPA money, which was one of the places where the money that was supposed to go to the schools was discussed, and that concerns me greatly. That the schools are being left not being made whole after we agreed to everything about the finance plan and how we were going to calculate the budget moving forward. We said we weren't asking for a baseline with that 1.8 put back in, but we were promised a lump sum and it has been rescinded. And that's really concerning to me.
Thank you, Amy.
Good evening. I'm Suzanne Stanner, 408 Whitehall Avenue, Staunton, Virginia. I'm also in opposition to building a court facility in the Hardy parking lot. That parking lot is used a lot. I've been down there several days this week taking pictures, and not one day was it sparsely parked. Apart from that, I have not heard any mention about the fact that Hardy parking lot is in the middle of historic districts. And so any intrusion of a court modern building into the historic districts could be detrimental or incompatible with what makes the historic district a historic district. Okay, the districts are on the Virginia Landmarks Register, National Register of Historic Places. So I guess I'd like to see what kind of input, or maybe you haven't had any input with the Virginia Department of Historic Resources yet regarding a facility or how you might design it so that it would look historic, even if it's not. Second of all, I'd like to see what studies have been done, or if not, will be done regarding the usage of the parking lot. How many people park there per day? What's their destination when they park there? How long do they park there? What are the demographics of the people that park there? You know, do they have mobility issues or what? And substitute parking, how would you meet the requirements that the people meet, or so that the same demographics can comfortably use a replacement parking lot to accomplish what they already accomplished downtown? Another question here is, well, that's about it, because the other ones have been accomplished through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mary Miller. I live at 471 Albemarle Avenue. And the reason that I'm telling you that is because I haven't been here for a while. Maybe you forgot me.
I will never forget you.
I'm a retired physician. I practiced excellent medicine. That's probably what you want your doctor to do too. In order for doctors to provide excellent medicine, we need funding and resources. In the same way, Staunton needs to dedicate funding and resources to provide excellent service to our citizens. If you lower property taxes, the children will get a bare bones education. You don't get an excellent education in school, or underpaid teachers are providing school supplies, and the general staff are underpaid also. Nor do you get necessary mental health support at a time when there's increased anxiety and depression among girls and ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder among boys. There's a big concern about taxes, property taxes, and I say property owners with the most valuable properties pay the highest taxes. They chose their property, and they are also free to choose to downsize and pay lower taxes. Staunton is known for its history, architecture, theater, music, dining, shopping, lodging, restaurants, college, churches, parks, and more. Staunton is a safe city because of our excellent fire and police departments. It's a good city in which to live and a popular destination for tourists. And it is located in the picturesque Shenandoah Valley. However, if we restrict funding to our schools, we will not be able to offer the excellent education needed to attract young professionals and working class people that have children and want to come here and go to our school. We have experienced businessman and city council member, I think his name is Terry Holmes. He may have the wisest ideas for the financial challenges between taxation and the provision of services, funding for excellent schools, and preparation for the next flood. There must be more government grants to tap. Staunton Crossing will fill the pockets of realtors, investors, and industrialists, with the small amount of tax revenue benefiting the poor and homeless, rebuild our infrastructure, or fund what we need for excellent schools. And never forget those who want to bring Uniontown and the West End into the 21st century. Staunton fills in many gaps through its many nonprofit organizations, including Blue Ridge Community Foundation, Shenandoah Green, Project Rose, Allegheny Mountain Institute, Ride with Pride, the Arcadia Project, the Lewis Creek Waterway, the African American Research Society, Building Bridges for the Greater Good, Juneteenth, the Rotary Club, the churches, and more. But these organizations cannot fill all the gaps. There's our famous prosperous downtown. Shall we limit parking for the Temple, Mary Baldwin Cove, Blackfriar, an exclusive restaurant, and the many businesses on the east end of East Beverly Street? And that's before the hundreds of people we envision will come to the Arcadia project, where millions of dollars are being invested. Surely the city council can find a less burdensome location for the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court for the city. The city of Staunton is ours only for a short time. We ask the city council to make wise decisions with long-term goals for excellence for now and for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Hello, thank you very much. I'm Elizabeth Ruskus, and yesterday morning we began to spread the word that we were going to do a petition for signatures for people who opposed the move to the Hardy Lot of the juvenile court, and it began to spread like kind of wildfire. We had very few people yesterday morning. We now have 142. I guarantee you that it would be much longer if we had more time. I'll deliver this to you tomorrow after I make a copy of this today. I think the names, though, don't tell you the whole story. It's the people who really sought me out, came to my house, called me, sent me letters, did whatever, like your stack of letters. I'm getting lots of input. There's a strong reaction here. And I appreciate that you all are listening, but please know there's a strong reaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hello, I'm Tara Cox. I have Words Matter on at 110 East Beverly. I'm in the front line with the block that's going to be immediately impacted if you confiscate the Hardy Lot for the court. Myself, together with Angela Higgs of Accordia, Susan Weeks of Bonfire Begonia, and Jim Comer, who manages the Hyben's Music Shop. We're all right there in that block. And we have seen, I opened in the middle of the pandemic, which was, you know, my right brain was saying, I'll go for it. My left brain was saying, what, are you crazy? But I'm still here. And one of the reasons that I think we're all still here is the community support, the mutual support of each other. I happen to stay open late on the weekends along with Accordion now since they came in. And we are the very front line for people who visit Staunton and local community who come downtown. And a lot of those people start on the east end because of that parking lot, especially people with mobility issues, because it's maybe the only parking lot where you don't have to worry about uphill, downhill to get to and from it. It's a flat area. So it's, and of course, a lot of people coming to Shakespeare with Bill Wilson, all of the other organizations, Mary Baldwin, et cetera. And we're right there. So they come to us on that block and they eat. And the next question they have is, so we're here for the weekend, where else should we go? So we're sending them all the way to the West End, all the way up to Book Dragon and that block there. We're sending, you know, and people, we get to hear, you know, what people are feeling and thinking about Staunton and why they like Staunton and why they decide sometimes right in the middle of being in a restaurant or a store, well, we're going to, you know, we're going to come next time for our anniversary. You know, we're going to come and bring our family back. But it's because of the spirit of cooperation and support. It is because they're made to feel welcome. It's because they can actually have a place to park. A lot of people are very concerned about, they have mobility issues or they're older, they don't want to park in multi-level garages, and they want to feel safe when they're in town. So this, taking this lot, and I understand your position, we really appreciate that you all are feeling this way, that the Hardy lot is low on your list. But I would like to not see that, okay, well, we can always fall back on the Hardy lot, because if that happens, we're going to do this all over again. You know, because we really, really are opposing it. And, I also want to say we thank you all for opening the streets during the pandemic on the weekends, because that helped a lot of people to stay in business. And the other side of this, in this context, is it's going to take parking. Of course, it takes parking away from the streets on the weekend. But with the Hardy lot, you know, and some of the other areas, it absorbs it. So if we don't want to lose that, because now we need to use the Hardy lot, because actually in the winter, everybody that came to visit said, when are you going to start opening the streets again, you know, for the weekend? So people do come here because of that. So the other thing that hasn't been mentioned, but I think it's and I don't know a lot about it, I'm just hearing a lot about it this week, is the structural integrity of the grounds in that area. I've heard it be, there's concern that it's going to, you know, corrupt the foundation of the surrounding structures. It's a very tight space there. You know, it's like you're plunking down this like thing, like squishing it in between. It's totally surrounded, and across from that is, you know, the local residents who also are very up in arms. And I agree with the corruption of the historical environs. And the other thing you were talking about, taxes, okay? So in the uncertainty of the hotel tax, the lodging, the sales, the meals, all of that, and also personal sales taxes of people who actually own businesses down there. So the more we thrive, the more vibrant our downtown is, the more taxes come to the city of Staunton. And we pay for business license, business property taxes, the sales tax every month, you know, all of that. And I also pay for business permit parking in the Hardy lot. So I don't know how much the parking brings you all there, but I think it's amazing. So that's it. 10 seconds left. So
Brenda Mead again, Sherwood Avenue, Staunton. First, I just want to make a remark. Mark Robertson, are you listening?
I am Brenda.
So I just want to point out that there were few times when Mark Robertson and I agreed on something. One of those times was that we should pay $5 get those buildings downtown. But that's water under the bridge, because Augusta County's not gonna sell those buildings to us for $1 each now. The second thing I want to point out is just that it's the statement that there couldn't be any public conversations about the Hardy lot is not accurate, because those conversations would not have impacted the value of that property. You weren't bidding with anybody. You weren't going to bid with anybody. So at that moment, on March the 23rd, when you all nodded your heads, said yes to the Hardy lot, did any one of you ask, while you were nodding your head, did you ask, gee, what are the people downtown going to think about that? Did any of you? Not a head nod from anybody? Then I'm going to assume you didn't. And that means you weren't doing your jobs. Because that should have been the first thing you thought about. Most of the people in this room would not be here at this moment in time if you had bothered to hear from the citizens. Staff does what you tell them to. But your responsibility is to walk up and down Beverly Street, talk to the nonprofit organizations, talk to citizens, before you make this kind of decision, before you start nodding your heads. Yeah, let's do that, because it's cheaper, because we own the property. There was no reason for you to keep it secret back then.
Good evening, members of council. Adam Campbell, 206 Meadowbrook Road. First, I just want to say thank you to staff for the presentation tonight on the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Courts facility. I found it very informative. Great information. It just should have been shared with the public much earlier in the process. Others have talked about transparency. I think an investment decision of this magnitude, it requires public input. It has to have public input. You can't issue an RFP for design services. I mean, that's asking for a contract for something, a commitment. You can't issue something like that without having a chance for public input, at least at a minimum. I know this is a difficult decision, and I appreciate all of staff's hard work on this process, but I just want to point out, as Mr. Blair said, it seemed like the state's representation is accommodating and understanding. So I'm sure they can appreciate the magnitude of this decision for a city of our size. And I think we just need to push the brakes on this and consider other options. There's been some interesting comments tonight from the citizens about just other alternatives to taking an approach on available properties. I'm curious if the city reached out to Mary Baldwin or VSDB. I mean, that's one facility that's right next door that I know for a fact is extremely underutilized. So I'm just curious if ideas outside of the box like that have been explored. So thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Adam.
Good evening. My name is Barry Swope, and both my wife Cindy and I are on record. We're two of the many letters you've gotten. I too appreciate the presentation tonight. We realize that we were dealing with incomplete information at times. I do think, I'll echo a number of people who said there are still process problems here. And I think you all need to look hard at those because we shouldn't be all here this late in the game. That said, I'm recently retired from decades of doing exactly what you all are doing. I work with county staff, I work with boards of supervisors, planning commissions, property acquisition up in Northern Virginia, which is arguably even worse than here. I think what I would say, I would go from adversary to advocate and cheerleader. You have something that makes this potentially easy. You have everybody on the same page at this point, even you all. I wish we'd known that months ago, but now we do. And I think you have counsel who, from all reports, is agreeable and amenable to reasonable compromise. I would urge you to put every facet into a focus on compromise. There's got to be a way to do this. Hardy is not the answer. It never has been. I understand it's a placeholder, and I accept that. But with all due respect, I've worked around construction for 40 years. You show me on November 1 date, 2025, that that's going to be done. I am not a betting man, but I'll bet you there's lots of room for compromise. So I just urge you, I really am here to support you. I think all of us are. We don't want to get into a dogfight over this. We all know where we want to be. So thank you very much for all your work. Staff especially, I thank you. I know how hard and thankless it is. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Perry.
Good evening, I'm Robin von Seldeneck. I live at 208 Baldwin Drive. I know that you've heard from me in my professional role as the president and CEO of the Woodrow Wilson Presidential Library. I'm one of those many emails that are there, but I wanted to just say that when we look at moving forward with this and the cost that's associated, please consider the cost of what happens if we lose that lot. I look at Councilmember Amy Darby. We started Mary Baldwin together in 1988. Stanton was a very different place in 1988. That was my first introduction to Stanton and how far it has come. And I am so proud of our city. I'm so proud that we take historic preservation seriously here. I'm so proud that we take the opportunity to rehabilitate spaces that we can use. And I just want to say, as a private citizen, please continue to think about that. Continue to think about the ramifications. What happens if we have to build there? What happens to the nonprofit organizations who will be losing so much in funding? To the businesses, the small business owners, to our residents who are not able to get up and down East Beverly because of accessibility issues. Finally, I want to thank you for listening to us, and I want to thank the staff. I know this is thankless work. The work that you do is so important, and I want to really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us.
Thank you, Robin.
Randolph Burton, 211 Hendren Avenue. Thank you guys for taking time to listen. I want to switch gears a little bit. I don't know how much you all are kind of paying attention to news around the country, but in a lot of locations, states, and localities, libraries are under siege. They're getting attacked by people who would be censors, and also political fighting, including defunding libraries, even across an entire state. And so I am very grateful and relieved to hear the words of your proclamation supporting the library in Staunton, and especially acknowledging that it's a library that serves the entire community and all the different views that we have here, and not just a segment of the community. And so I really appreciate that sounds like a heartfelt commitment to the library. And I hope you'll also back that up in the budget as you go through the budget process. And just want to reiterate that the library, this is one of the jewels of Staunton and used by so many citizens, even though we're much lower population than Augusta County. We have a lot more circulation of material. So it's a very active community center that deserves city support. And so I just want to thank you for your ongoing support of the library.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Miller. I live at 216 Institute. Lived here for 19 years. I'm a real estate developer with a lot of experience in adaptive reuse. I'm also a retired professional engineer. I'm also a realtor, also on the construction company. I'd like to point out one thing that hadn't come up yet tonight, and that is historic tax credits. In January of 2015, there was a consultant that made a presentation to City Council, and it was determined that the city can use Virginia Historic State tax credits if done properly. It's a little tricky legally, but it can be done. It has been done for other courthouses. It's been done in Richmond and a couple of different places. that would cut your cost by 25%. So if it were a $10 million expense, a hard and soft cost, you could save $2.5 million. That's number one. Number two, like most everyone here, I wasn't aware of this until it came out in the paper. I do believe, I don't know all of the locations that have been explored, but I do believe there are several that in my mind will work, that would allow historic tax credits, which would save a lot of money for the city of Staunton. And finally, I would like to, as a concerned citizen, volunteer my time to meet with city staff, public works, any of you, to share my ideas. I don't have an axe to grind. I'm not trying to make a nickel. I just think that we're going in the wrong direction, and it's be a disaster for downtown Staunton if you take that lot away. So let's look at other options. And I'll meet anybody anytime. I'm in town Thursday and Friday. Happy to meet with whoever. And let's see if we can put our heads together and come up with a better solution. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian Devildock at 145 North Coulter Street. That's a tough act to follow. So I want to thank the mayor, council members. I want to thank the city staff for their time, effort, dedication, and tonight indulgence. In my prior life, 43 years worth of public service at a town a little bit bigger than this city, about 2.5 hours north and east. And I know the difficulty of these types of choices. And I appreciate your serious consideration and listening to all others as you move forward on the new JDR. So my wife and I moved here 4 years ago. And we have immersed ourselves in the culture, the richness of the city, educational opportunities, but we volunteer a lot for a lot of the nonprofits as well. We also happen to be members of Temple House of Israel, and in fact, that was one of the reasons why we came here, to have this part of the Jewish community. A few days ago, we had the opportunity, and we appreciate very much, meeting with the city manager and the director of public works at the temple. It was a productive meeting, a lot of exchanges and questions and answers. We found it very helpful. One of the things, actually my wife, who could not be here tonight due to illness, asked if they'd like to see the historic sanctuary, and they took advantage of Ruth Childgrove, who's back here, our temple historian. So we took them in. These are my impressions of once they saw our famous stained glass windows shipped from Henry Conn & Company in Boston to our temple, I think 1925, when the temple was under construction. And we had the receipts from Boston. They are no longer in business. One of the questions we had during our discussions were, what happens if? What happens if a pane gets broken? What happens if a pebble goes through it? They're irreplaceable. And of course, we also asked the question, what about liability? We have spent a lot of money, time, and effort in the last few years on the outside and inside to preserve the Sam Collins design building. It is the only Moorish building, I believe, in Staunton. And we are concerned about structural integrity because the property line goes right to the curb. We also showed city manager and the director of public works our historic Moravian tile on our ark, right? And again, what happens if? And my impression was, after a while, their view was, yes, we are a congregation, but even more, we're a community. We're people. We're presence. Earlier tonight, and I think they had to leave, there was Reverend Lipscomb from the Anglican Church of the Valley. For many years, our temple has allowed other churches, while they raise the finances to construct their own building to worship in our facility. They pay a modest amount of rent. They've all helped in our capital projects. And both they and we, because they were present for the meeting, one of the things was our population is older, mobility challenged. On their end, they said the Sundays when the streets are closed downtown, they barely have places to park. They said if the building goes forward, they're gonna have to vacate. That would affect us because we have the same concerns. What if our more senior and more mobility challenged members, we're 45 member units, we're not big. What if a few of them decide it's not worth the hassle? It's not worth the bother to try to go downtown and find a space. Well, that could really impact our viability per se. We're right at the breaking point now. We've been a part of the fabric of Staunton since 1876, and we want to keep it that way. We want to be good neighbors, we want to be part of a good community. So we appreciate your reconsideration if there are alternatives. I was heartened by what was said tonight. So thank you again, and thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm Ruth Chadro. I live at 811 Summer Boulevard, and I am the informal historian of the temple, and I wish to extend to all of the members of council and any of the interested public, I would be happy to give you a tour of our building. It's going to be almost 100 years old. Actually, in 2025, it will be 100 years old. It is one of the gems of downtown Staunton. We've had visitors from the Smithsonian come to look at our stained glass windows that are unique and frankly irreplaceable. And the prospect of having the J&D courthouse in the Hardy lot overshadowing our temple, blocking light to the stained glass windows, causing possible visibility and security problems to our temple is something that we are concerned about. So I would invite, again, members of council and any interested public. I'll be happy to set up tours of our temple so you can see how lovely it is from the inside as well as the outside.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth.
Cindy Connors, 106A Skyline Avenue. When I moved here, I was impressed by a lot of things, but the number one thing I was impressed by was Staunton's people. And the things like we have matters for the public where you can talk for 5 minutes on anything you want to. It's really that spirit of that communication and cooperation and the gem of Staunton's people. I've never seen so many engaged citizens in such a small town before. I say that because smart people figured out the vision of Staunton Crossing. Smart people that lived here figured out to close down the street during COVID. Smart people have figured out all kinds of things to improve the city of Staunton. Smart people can figure this out, this courthouse issue. I'm absolutely opposed to the courthouse on the party lot. And smart people can figure it out. I know they can with the right inspiration. I also know that the city of Staunton's people could have been engaged without jeopardizing any any negotiations on real estate. The city of Staunton's not a stranger to surveying its citizens. In fact, we're about to spend $100,000 on another RFP, which includes surveying the people in West End to see what they need there. We could have and should have talked to our citizens about this courthouse, but I ask you, and it appears that you're doing that, to listen to us now. I think the council and the city of Staunton is sort of on a, I can't think of the word I'm talking about, but it's a moment that you have to choose to invest in the city of Staunton, which includes the budget and the tax rate, to invest in the downtown by not putting the courthouse in the Murray district. I think you have the right moment in time right now to show
how much you care about the spirit and the heart, and the people of the city of Staunton. And I'm going to segue into a little plug. I care about the West End infinitely, as you all know, and I'm going to invest my morning on Saturday in cleaning up the West End, because the West End Business Association, who also cares about the West End, is sponsoring their cleanup day. So please join us and put a little of your muscle and your blood, sweat, and tears into helping the West End. We're meeting in the parking lot of Marquis Memorial, which is catty corner across from the Mission, or across the street from that Family Dollar store. And we're meeting, staging between 9:45 and 10 a.m. on Saturday, and we need your help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Larry Sucker. My wife and I moved here in 1979 from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and our blood does run blue. I'm sorry to hear about the financial difficulties that kept y'all from buying the 5 buildings from the county. Somebody has offered before, but I didn't see any money flash out, so I do have this. Help to get done. I came here to join the staff of Western State Hospital, and we began attending Temple House of Israel, which is on 15 North Market, and which abuts the Hardy parking lot. And we began attending there. A few years ago, my wife became the treasurer of the temple, and because I forgot to attend a meeting, I was made president, and that's just the way things happen. But Temple House of Israel has been home for the Jewish community. I think Brian Delabach mentioned since about the 1860s or 70s, but it has also been the birthplace of several Christian churches here in town who were starting congregations, or who had, for one reason or another, lost their place of worship, and they worshiped in our sanctuary. For the last 12 years, the Anglican community of the Valley have shared our sanctuary and the social hall, and they've been very supportive. The issue for me and for us, and I'm speaking on behalf of our congregation, 40 some odd, we call them units, sometimes that's a family, sometimes that's an individual, but I'm also going to just presume to speak on behalf of the Anglicans. The parking lot is extremely important to Temple House of Israel for parking. We have some younger people in the congregations of both groups, but you know, a lot of them are getting older. And notice I say a lot of them are getting older, but I guess I am too. And we, a few years ago, worked with Frank Strassler and the historic Staunton Foundation to create a handicap entrance in our building, but to do it in such a way that it remained in harmony with the historic preservation goals. I know that there's a long history of caring about downtown Staunton. I saw pictures from about, I think, late 1960s when there used to be wires overhead running down Main Street, down Beverly Street, and it looked like, you know, something out of an old western. Those wires got buried apparently about the same time that the federal government wanted to run a highway down where the wharf is, and y'all had the forethought, and I think brilliance, to say no to that money, and to, you know, keep those buildings and to make the highway go elsewhere. And out here on these boards out here in the hallway, Temple House of Israel is actually mentioned twice, once in words, but there's also a picture of the temple that was built in 1926. So I know you care. And I hope that you continue to, find another site for the juvenile domestic relations court. I believe that's important. They need a place that's safe and secure for all the people who will be involved there. And it's not just a matter of not in my backyard, because you already heard from a number of people, Blackfriars and Arcadia and other people who share that lot. And it's actually more important now because as we enter spring, summer, and fall, I notice a bunch of little things sticking up in the middle of Beverly Street, which means that the 50 to 60 parking spaces that are available along Beverly for people who wish to go to these restaurants and stores and things like that would normally come to the Hardy parking lot. But if there's a big building in the Hardy parking lot, they won't be able to do that. So I hope that you are able to continue your searches and find an alternative. And I'll help any way I financially can. Just get you started, okay? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Good evening. My name is Angela Hicks. I'm basically, I live on 112 Sproul Lane, which is in College Circle, but what brings me here tonight is also something we had forgotten to mention earlier, and that is that we have also went up and down the street, and I look at my co-patrons over there because we've done that all together, and we had basically every business, pretty much 62 businesses in Staunton signed this petition also. So we will also give you this petition to have, because it's not just citizens, it's not just non-for-profits, it's also us as businesses. And I can tell you, I started my business 6 months ago, and I have received fantastic support from everybody around me. I have received so much collegiality. I mean, I come from Germany, and that's completely different there, so I'm really appreciating this very much, that everybody cares for each other here. And that's really what I really appreciate so much. That's what made me also choose Staunton when we moved here 4 years ago, because that was a city that I thought was very European. And I feel exactly like that. So it's really fantastic that we have all these businesses supporting us, because we are, as Tara said, on the east side, but everybody also on the west side and everywhere around, around Staunton we went, everybody pretty much supported that we would like to not have the Harding parking lot being used as this kind of thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Lenny Spiker. I'm from 124 East Beverly Street. We have a little shop of crystals down there on the east end. It's actually our second store. Back in early 2021, we had started to look for a location for our second store. Staunton was one of the top locations that we were looking at Charlottesville, Waynesboro, Harrisonburg. But we ended up settling in on Staunton. And we were very shocked and very pleased with the reception that we received from Staunton. The people coming in and shopping and supporting the new small business in the area. And one of the reasons, there were many reasons why we decided on Staunton. One of the reasons was the pedestrian traffic flow in the spot that we were looking at in Staunton. Coming down from, starting at the Hardy parking lot, that was a major consideration for us as people from there, from Hotel 24, from the Shakespeare Theater, Arcadia was there, another huge thing for us, hoping that to get up and running and just revitalize that whole area. And, we're sitting there with that impression that this is a spot that's going to, there's a bunch of little small businesses there. I mean, it's us, it's Words Matter, Accordia, Bonfire, Begonia, and we rely on that traffic flow. We rely on people coming down from that spot and walking their way up to the west end. And any kind of disruption to that is very disturbing for a business owner. When you don't know how that's going to impact it. And that could be the difference between wiping out 4 or 5 different businesses there because that pedestrian walk it's not there anymore. So that's a huge consideration. I know you guys have that as a placeholder as for now. I think we appreciate it's only a placeholder. However, I would be concerned that it is a placeholder because as over time, when things don't come to bear, the placeholder then becomes, we're doing it. And, you knew we were doing it because we told you we had it as a placeholder. So I appreciate you guys looking at other places, but, several businesses, all businesses down there, rely on that pedestrian walkthrough. So we appreciate you guys making sure that that is not only the last option, but not even an option. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lenny.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Wilson Fulber. I live at 318 Woodmont Drive in Staunton. As I've been before you on numerous occasions, I was born in Staunton. I've seen the changes that have taken place, and I take pride in the historic downtown region that we have. It is something that we all take pride in and are very, very grateful for. I think most of us realize that it does bring in a lot of business. It brings a lot of tourism to our city. It's extremely important. I want to see that continue. As I've pondered on this issue about the JD Court, my thoughts are this. The court services a very small segment of our population, fortunately. And the parking lot, Hardy parking lot, as you've already expressed, as folks out here have expressed, and some have already left, it serves so many people. And certainly the consensus from the citizens of Staunton that I've heard tonight is no, no, no at the Hardy parking lot. That we're not going to stand for it. So I would hope, if you haven't already come to this conclusion, that that is not a viable situation, that is not a possibility at all, because the residents of Staunton are not going to stand for it. We do not want the JD courts on the Hardy parking lot. There are many other locations that can be considered. As has been mentioned tonight, eminent domain is certainly possible. It's not a pleasant thing to go through. Certainly hope we don't have to go through that, but that would be an option versus disrupting the Temple House of Israel, the businesses downtown. Those things have to be considered. I think that holding this in place met a deadline, but from tonight and moving forward, that is no longer a consideration that is going to happen in that parking lot. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Wilson.
Council Mayor, my name is Johan Westenberg. I live at 940 West Beverly, and I'm currently entertaining you with my facade renovation at 113 West Beverly. Hope you're all enjoying that. There are two things that I want to say, and I'll keep it really brief. The word that really concerns me is placeholder. I think this idea that you need something in a place for a temporary thing opens the door to something that's always going to be there. And when you think about the old building at 6 Johnson Street, the first piece was built in 1953, and then 30 years later, 1983, they built another piece. And now it's 40 years later, and we're talking about building a building that might last for 20 years. And I think that's really, really disconcerting. And as the partial owner with my wife of an anonymous cinder block building right across the street from you, I think you can all meditate every day on what that placeholder thing looks like. You know, you had a beautiful building there that burned down, then it was a pocket park, and then somebody at 1983 decided, well, we could put in a cinder block building with a false facade, and look what we're stuck with, you know. The other thing that really, really concerns me very much is the idea that you talk about a generic courthouse plan. Prior to living here in Staunton, where we moved to in October of 2021, because of its historical downtown, because of Temple House, where I'm a member as well, we lived in a county seat in Kentucky for much of the year. And there too, there was a city council that had great grant writing skills and was given tons of money from the Commonwealth of Kentucky to build these grandiose, false facade, secure, well-circulating, and what was the other word? I can't remember the third criteria. Accessible buildings that are just a blight on the downtown, because what you get is you get this giant pie and these horrible parking lots that have to be accessible, and as you say, that have to be secure for the judge, secure for the detainees, secure for the public. I really find the two words generic floor plan, it's the scariest thing I can really hear. And that and placeholder, please do not think of using the Hardy parking lot for a generic floor plan and a placeholder. It's just a sin, okay? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like you're going.
Hi, my name's CJ Clark. I live at Prospect Street in Staunton. If I'm a little shaky, it's been a long time since I talked in public or with a microphone. I attended the listening session. I think it was last week. I'm really bad at dates. But I know Michelle was there. I know Mayor Claffey was there. I know one of the points that was brought up was that a pre-planning committee, which is suggested in the guidelines from the Supreme Court, was maybe not formed. I asked Mayor Claffey if he knew who was on the task force to work on this project, and he said, I don't know. I noticed in the presentation today, which was beautiful, and I appreciated it, it didn't include any current court staff. It didn't include the sheriff, and I know he's here tonight. I know there are other JDR people here. That facility is important. That facility is important to people who deal with foster care, foster kids. It's really important that it is built right the first time and not the second or the third. In the first 15 pages of that guideline, I know it's long, but it tells you that it should include all of the current judges for our district. And it includes the sheriff and other people, including Public Works, and I appreciate what they've done, but it doesn't seem like everyone has been included that should be included. And it just seems like maybe those people should have been included, and I appreciate that the guidelines are malleable, but maybe we don't skip those steps of the pre-planning committee and considering what our specific Staunton court's needs are. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Bradley Lyle. I live at 806 High Street. Some of you may recognize me. I'm your UPS driver. Also a downtown business owner. I'm the building that houses the Hyphens, and it's a building at 14 South New Street, the Storefront Hotel. I think everybody's brought up pretty much everything I agree with, except what's the plan for Augusta County? They still own the buildings? What are they going to do if they leave? Is this going to be more vacant buildings for the city to have? Or, I mean, obviously it was a big mistake not to buy it for $5, but for me personally, I think maybe we should talk to them and find out their plan, try to acquire it. I mean, even if you couldn't make a courthouse museum, something. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Bradley.
I'm Susan Boyd. I have a house at 265 Thornrose Avenue. I really appreciate the sensitivities that people have brought up about the temple because I have a Sam Collins house. It's near and dear to my heart. I bought my wildly overpriced and wildly over budget house because I so appreciate the historic character of Staunton. It's why we chose to come here to retire. I'm so afraid that this placeholder is going to become real and destroy that fabric. I'm also concerned about what's going to happen to the existing courthouse. There doesn't seem to have been an effort to obtain that building. And I tried really hard to keep up with my local government in Alexandria, where I came from, and here, and I find it really hard to find out what is going on in Staunton. I appreciate the sensitivity of real estate negotiations, but this whole state requirement to get a new courthouse should have been shared with everybody who's going to be affected by it. And it seems to have come as a surprise to all of us. There is an opacity to this process that I find very disturbing. And I'm hoping that tonight will be a wake-up call for a great many people. Thank you for your time. Thank you. This evening.
Good evening, folks. My name's Howard McDowell. I live at 200 North Market Street. I communicated a little bit with you this week. I want to say something about eminent domain. Eminent domain affects one party, but they get paid. There may be some argument about the pay, but they get paid. All these organizations that get affected at Hardy Street don't get paid. They pay. We kill the goose and lay the gander. And finally, I want to say this. It seems absurd that the requirement that a city would build a courthouse that would essentially destroy its own character. Why not consider becoming a town? Be done with the courthouse and let it be Augusta County's courthouse. That's something to think about in terms of the cost of what you're about to do. All just to have a city courthouse. Is it really worth it? It may not be.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody? No. No, sir. Anyone else? All right, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you for coming.